Welcome to episode 61 of Cyclops is Waiting for Me, an X-Men the Animated Series weekly recap podcast. I'm Rod, a huge Storm fan, so was excited about this episode until we actually watched it, and also a musician, and that's a truck that I'm just going to leave in so you know that we're recording this.
And I'm JC. You can find me streaming now weekly. I'm going to say this a few weeks in the future, so that way I have to stick to it. Every Sunday night, I am going to be doing Warhammer painting because, as Rod can vouch, I have a lot of Warhammer miniatures that are just primed and nothing else. So I need to start painting these bastards.
I was going to say, yeah, you have a whole set down there. You have like the temple thing and the, I'm going to say football field, but that's not right.
Blood Bowl, which is football. You're not wrong. Okay. Yep. No, you are correct, sir.
Cool.
Yep.
I'm not completely unobservant.
Cyclops is Waiting for Me is our weekly podcast series where we are going back and watching every single episode of the original 1992 X-Men the Animated Series in their original intended script order, building up to the release of X-Men 97, which is coming to Disney Plus later this year.
Some quick reminders. We're a recap show about a series that started over 30 years now. There will be spoilers. If you don't want to spoil for you, pause the podcast, watch the episode, and come back. We'll do our best to avoid mentioning anything about future episodes we haven't covered yet. And we're currently not sponsored or affiliated with Disney or Disney Plus in any way.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. Social media. It's okay, leave that in. You left in the truck. At Cyclops IWFM Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and also there's the YouTube channel too. You know, that's a thing. Make sure to follow us on your favorite podcast services. Finally, we record these episodes in batches. So if we're reacting to any news about the upcoming series, we may be behind. There's another truck.
That's the news. There might be a truck in the anime in X-Men 97.
Nailed it.
That's our. We should make that to like one of those. We got this covered.
Please
memes.
Please do.
There might be a truck.
Confirmed. There will be a truck. No, sorry. Sources say there will be a truck.
I'm so bad at this clickbait wording. Now onto the show. Today we're going to be talking about season 5, which you know is going to make this weird. I'm not even going to say interesting. Episode 3, titled Stormfront, Part 1. It aired November 2nd, 1996, and currently sits at a 6.9 star rating on IMDb.
You are a child.
That makes sense. Oh, I didn't even mean that. I just meant like low numbers. But yeah, 692, that's funny. It's the funny number.
So Rod's the host on these two episodes because they're Storm episodes.
Yeah, I love Storm. And we were just saying before this, John was like, oh, I thought that you'd be good for these until I watched them. I was like, yeah, I get it. But I still love Storm, even though she's a little dumb in this story arc.
Spoiler.
Right? Yeah. I guess that is kind of a spoiler because usually she's the level-headed one. Anyway, on theme, this opens up with the National Weather Service report that is basically describing the way the weather was in LA the last week of February.
So there was hail, gale force winds. The only thing we did not get here was monsoon waves.
Yeah, we had that previously, though.
Yes, but not all at the same time, Rod.
Yeah. We did have a tiny tornado touchdown, which was wild.
Dope.
I think it only took out one tree. All my friends in Indiana were laughing, but I was like, I get why you're laughing. But also,
that will end this city.
This was Los Angeles. One single tornado taking one tree was wild. Like, this was, what did I say? I texted our mutual friend Ali Spagnola. I was like, either, because she was filming an outdoor video that weekend. I was like, either it's because Ali had a film shoot and nature was getting back at her, or Christians were correct about premarital dancing. So we don't know. Could go either way. So anyway, the Weather Service is reporting that things are going haywire, specifically in the DC area.
And a Friends of Humanity person interrupts the reporter and blames it on the mutants. And it's like, there are just a scary amount of correlations to the insanity of bigots from 30 years ago to today.
Yeah. So it's his version of, see, you shouldn't have been dancing before you got married.
No. Anyway. You know, I was wondering, did he actually say premarital dancing? And he did.
Yeah. Well, that was always the joke. My brother's a pastor, and also I've been around a bunch of Bible colleges and stuff. And that was always the joke, is that premarital sex isn't allowed because it might lead to dancing. Because that was like one of the big rules in like a lot of those Bible colleges dorms is like, no dancing. Okay, what is this, flash dance? Like, what's
I do remember, because I also went to a Catholic school growing up, and our school wasn't too bad about it. Like, nobody was like grinding in 8th grade or anything like that. But we were allowed to dance. We went to one of the sister schools, and they literally had rulers. So you had to have room for the Holy Spirit.
Oh, wow.
They would literally put the 12-inch ruler between you. So you could like have your arm on their shoulders. But if they couldn't fit the ruler in between you, they would literally separate you.
See, that is a little less disturbing than like where I grew up. They always said had to leave room for Jesus. I'm like, Jesus is kind of gross if he's standing between us and what's happening right now. The Holy Spirit's a little bit less graphic.
God damn it. Why is this not the video episode?
Anyway.
We definitely found our clips.
Yeah. We're trying to make this episode interesting because...
So line 3 of my notes.
Yes. The Blackbird is caught in the storm, and Storm the person is in the Blackbird with Jubilee and some of the other X-Men, and she's...
Cyclops, Beast, Wolverine, Jubilee, and Storm. Yes.
And she's physically getting sick. It like almost nauseous, it kind of seems.
Right.
And she's saying in much more eloquent and Shakespearean of words, but basically that something not of this earth is distressing nature. So it hits a boiling point where she freaks out. She opens up the emergency hatch and just jumps out.
Well, before she does that, we do get the confirmation from Beast that it is irregular weather patterns, that it doesn't match from a meteorological perspective. Fuck me.
Oh, yeah, with like air pressure and stuff.
Yeah. And then Jubilee is like trying to comfort her. And it's like, oh, no, it's just rough air. And it's like, and then she yells at Cyclops to land. Which made me laugh. I'm sorry.
She's just learning from her surroundings, right?
Yeah, nature versus nurture.
So Jubilee is trying to stop Storm and almost falls out of the jet. I don't know if she forgot the Storm can fly and to not maybe worry about it too much, and also controls the weather. So the two things that are the threats outside, probably not an issue for Storm. Wolverine catches her.
But then he says the phrase that I was very confused by, where Wolverine says, she's got to do this?
Yeah.
What the fuck does she have to do and why? Like, I was so confused what he was talking about.
That kind of implied to me that he's had enough experiences with her. He's like, listen,
she's going to lose her shit.
You're not going to do anything that's going to make this better. You know, it's kind of similar to like my dad growing up told me, like, whenever I had like a logistical issue with mom or like, well, that doesn't make sense. My dad's like, shh, saying yes to mom and doing it will be easier than dealing with whatever your mom's response is to not doing it. He's like, we've been married for decades now. It doesn't matter what she's asking you to do. It will be easier.
Did you just Jubilee your dad right now? Because there is a chance. We know your dad doesn't listen to this, but we know your mom might.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So you just threw your dad under the bus the same way that Jubilee threw the X-Men under the bus to Wolverine in the last episode.
Oh, yeah, totally. But also, I wouldn't write off my mom being proud of that either. She'd be like, oh, yes, she's trained.
So Cyclops yells.
And this is where the famous screen cap of Jubilee pointing in the Blackbird is from. I didn't know it was this episode.
Right. It's funny because like I had no idea where that one was coming from. But anytime I'm looking for the screen grabs to make the Instagram images and stuff like that, I don't know who controlled the SEO on it. But for some reason, that appears in like the top 5 images, no matter what episode you look up.
That's funny.
It is always there. So we know what the thumbnail for this episode is going to be.
We should change like one character. I don't want to Photoshop anything.
I was going to say, you're the one that's going to do that. I don't even have Photoshop, so.
Cyclops can't get the controls to respond. It's like physically fighting him back. I don't know how planes work.
Well, he says the wind shear was 3 times what it should be, so they need to land, and then purple lightning wind blows off a part of the wing.
This was funny because we were kind of reviewing our notes before recording, and
yes,
John
we take notes.
John said wind, and I was like, oh, I thought it was lightning, and we both agreed like it's animation.
Yeah.
Knocked out part of wing.
It is an angry animation. Attack the wing.
And so they have to crash land. It does like incapacitate the ship, but everybody inside is unharmed.
Yeah.
Storm arrives at the White House and it looks like it's hailing or something, or some sort of like ice thing going on. So she commands the ice to turn into steam. A character walks by that seems like they got lost on the way out of Masters of the Universe.
I called him Thunderbolt Guy.
Oh, yeah. Same. Or like Dollar Store Thor or something.
I mean, he did have a little quiver with mini lightning bolts.
Oh, yeah.
Which he never uses in either of the episodes.
Yeah, this is you gotta wonder if this was this was a little late for the Masters of the Universe craze, but what other like in pop culture for kids zeitgeist was like, because that's probably what they drew from, right?
Well, this character originally debuted in the Avengers, and I didn't write the date down, but I should
have assumed it was an existing character.
Yeah, but he was not an X-Men character. He was an Avengers villain originally.
See, that tracks. It's weird, like when you grow up with these different
original debut, Avengers 75 in 1970.
Jeez. Okay. Oh, the 70s track with that design, kind of like that style or whatever. So it wasn't actually something for kids at the time. So that makes more sense then. But it also makes sense that he wasn't part of the X-Men universe, because it's weird when you grow up with these different properties and superhero groups, even when they're in the same house, like the Marvel house or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that doesn't seem like an X-Men looks
He very much gives looks like he would have been straight up a Thor villain.
Yeah. So we only see the back of him, so we know this is going to be our mysterious character for like 30 seconds. And then we cut back to the Blackbird, and Wolverine is cutting everyone out of the Blackbird so they can get out.
What I thought was funny about that, though, is they already had a hatch open from when Storm fucked off on the other side of the jet.
And also that it crash landed and created no other openings.
That's fine. It's a really good jet.
Yeah. But also, Wolverine needed to cut something.
And then he insults Cyclops by calling him Bug-Eye.
I don't know why I started thinking about it, because I think usually I'm just like, okay, just insulting him or whatever. And I'm like, Bug, is it good? One eye? What bug has one eye? Like,
yeah,
he just looks weird. I guess this is a or
well,
like
I mean, that was like when he got called Four Eyes by Blob, and it's like, that's the opposite of what he is, sir.
It has to have a root in some like long dead, not as famous insult from the 90s kind of thing, that I just forgot about.
And then Cyclops yells.
Yeah. And then we go back to Storm. She's calming the weather at several other like notable monuments that I probably should know the name of.
I believe it was the Lincoln.
I thought it was Lincoln, but it looked like it was different. It was the guy standing. What's that one?
Is that the Jefferson?
That one. I think that's the one that I saw.
Oh, I just looked at the shape of the building and I assumed Lincoln.
Because I looked inside, or maybe I blinked and it changed, and it was both.
It was not that.
She does end up at the Washington Monument, though, the giant penis one. And she's standing on top of it, and she calms the weather there, but then she's tapped and falls off. And the dude that was watching, well, okay, we got to rewind just a little bit. So while she's calming all this weather stuff down, the lightning god guy or whatever is walking by. He's getting a boner watching all this. He's like, yes, And so, so when the lightning hits Storm and she gets knocked down and she's tapped out, boner dude catches her.
Which I literally put caught by creep, which is the nice way of saying boner dude. Yep.
And he pushes like a thing on his chest. It's like a communicator looking thing, and it just shuts all the crazy weather off.
Right.
So you kind of get the sense that he was creating all this crazy weather stuff to bait Storm.
Interestingly enough, there is the scenario with how he crosses paths in the comics with Storm. Originally, he was trying to use Thor for what would be a later part of this story, but Thor was not around, so he settles in the comics for Storm.
That doesn't track in my head because of what I know of Thor and Storm.
Lightning powers.
No, I know the lightning, but it feels like Storm has more.
It was only the lightning. It was like a power up scenario,
gotcha,
rather than a keeping control scenario.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
that's getting more icky.
That she was his second choice.
Yeah, right.
Pretty sure he wasn't trying to fuck Thor though. It was the 70s, and that was not comics code appropriate.
Although now we know that we can't say that might not have been the author's intention, because what I learned from you and Joe Schlepsky about Mystique, the writers.
That was Claremont. Claremont took some risks that other writers never would have.
But like, even if he never executed it word for word, it was like kind of like his Bible in his head for the character or something. So I don't know, maybe
Archon wanted to fuck Thor.
Yeah.
Yep. Rod Kim.
They're both very attractive, super muscular men. Anyway, and have a thing for lightning. So Archon says his name's Archon,
which I don't often do it because I'm not like Rod, where I can watch TV without having closed captioning on. But I needed to make sure I was spelling the name right and getting the name of the planet right. So I did turn on closed caption for just that point.
I had to pause closed captioning to spell this planet name we're about to say. And Archon says that he has traveled across dimensions to find Storm. Which they kind of gloss over of like what that sounds super stalkery, especially just how he's been behaving watching her.
We gloss over a lot of the stalkery nature of Archon.
Yeah. And says he needs her to rescue his planet of Polmachus.
Yep.
Think that's how?
Sure.
I made a comment to John before we started recording. When I was typing my notes, it kept trying to spell correct it to a slightly different spelling. It was like one letter off. So I'm kind of curious that I could easily Google this, but I'm not. That maybe this is some sort of like real thing that they misspelled. While he's explaining this to her, the X-Men are trying to reach Storm through the communicators and can't. Storm can hear broken speech from the X-Men, but is frustrated that her communicator is not working, so she rips it off and throws it on the ground, which I originally thought was a really dumb thing to do. A cartoon thing to do, but a dumb thing to do. Is like, this doesn't work. Throw it away.
Nope, it was smart.
Yeah, Archon very quickly abducts Storm. Right before he takes like I thought it was a bead, because it looked like it by the size of how the characters are pinching between their fingers. We'll have a discussion about how it's described later. He pulls it off of like his outfit, throws it on the ground, and it opens up a portal. They leave through the portal, but Storm is smart enough to grab one of the beads and like leave it behind before they completely go through. We go back to the crash site of the Blackbird. Jubilee is flagging down a car in the middle of the road.
Yep, she's hitchhiking.
And Wolverine basically just steals the car.
So only because I'm the one who goes into like, you know, the well, actually. They abducted this man. They did not steal his car.
Yeah, it's both. It's all about the column A.
Yeah, they literally surround him and...
They don't give him a choice.
And they don't even like put the smallest people in the front seat with this dude. They literally put the biggest people in the front seat. So this guy's stuck in between Beast and Wolverine.
And probably, with maybe the exception of Cyclops, the oddest looking people that are also the largest.
Well, Jubilee even makes a comment about that. She's like, oh, they're not as bad as they look.
Yeah. And Beast is like, you'll be properly compensated. He's like, okay, thanks. Before or after I die?
Yeah. After I'm stuffed into a skin suit.
Back at the mansion, Beast is telling Xavier that the weather has been back to normal, but that they lost Storm. Xavier says that he can't sense Storm, so she's either way too far away.
Thousands of miles is what he specifies.
Or unconscious, which is not good for New York to DC.
Or worse. He actually says or worse, too.
So, you know.
Yep.
And at the monument, the X-Men find Storm's communicator and bead, and that's when I realized, like, oh, she left it so they would know that she's the one that left all the stuff behind. And also has
because how would they ever find one of those bead balls or whatever it was if it was just by itself?
Yeah, and also know that it was in association with her situation. She also has great aim because they're like inches apart from each other.
Yeah, and then they make a golf joke.
Yeah,
this is what threw you off from the sizing perspective.
Yeah, because they said it was a golf ball,
right?
But when they hold it between their fingers, it looks more like a large pearl or something. So sure, it doesn't matter. But was this? That was probably actually on the technical side of things. That was probably like a communication with animation, right?
You got to imagine they're like, here's the character design. Mm-hmm. He pulls the thing off of it, so they're not necessarily translating what the words they're going to say are going to be for the animators that are coming up with the costume design. Yeah. You know,
or you know what would be great is that they totally forgot to figure out that logistic. And they were like, just figure it out.
Just fucking deal with
because
it.
Because they give like very little description of this thing throughout the entire 2 episodes, except that it grants you portals. So they figure out that this has something to do with Storm's abduction or what happened to her. They haven't put together yet that it's a portal.
No, they just know that it's different elements than anything found on Earth, basically.
Yeah. So they go back to the mansion and they're studying it, and they said it's not of any known element. Wolverine makes a comment that I don't know if this is not even a 90s reference, but a pre-Y2K reference. He says playing chemistry set won't help anything. Are chemistry sets still a thing? I don't know if this is because I don't have kids or...
Oh, sorry. Your comment is like our chemistry
sets. Yeah, because... I know, like, in the before I was born, chemistry sets were like a dangerous, but also like a common toy thing. And even when I was a kid, getting chemistry set was kind of a thing that some kids would want. I feel like I don't see them on toy store shelves anymore.
I feel like I saw it as a trope in TV, but never actually knew anyone who had one in real life.
Oh, that was me.
I didn't know you before Los Angeles, so I don't believe it.
No, I mean, like, I was one of those kids that had chemistry set.
Oh, I know that.
I didn't use it correctly, but I actually can't remember anything from it. But
I think you imagined it.
Yeah, right. Like my whole I'm still convinced that sometime in 2020, when all that lockdown stuff happened, a lot of us just got put into the simulation. Because there's a lot of stuff that feels like it didn't happen, but I was told about later. Anyway, I just didn't know if like the chemistry set thing is like a dated reference and not even specific to the decade, but just like it's not a thing anymore. Like
I said, I felt like it was dated then, but still appeared in pop culture, even though it wasn't appearing in real life outside of where you're from.
Well, that also makes sense too, because we've said a lot of times that the writers for this show were adults when we were kids, so they were pulling from their childhood, which was a decade or two before,
when there were no safety measures in place for children, and you could give them shit that would explode.
Yeah, because it wasn't. I'm probably gonna get this wrong. There probably wasn't actually uranium, but there was stuff like that, like dangerous substances in chemistry sets and toys and things that they would.
There was uranium in like fucking like green glass,
siesta plates and stuff, right?
Yeah. So there was no safety measures in place.
It was just an interesting thing. I hadn't heard chemistry set being referenced in a TV show in a long time.
But Wolverine overreacts. He ends up throwing the ball, and all of a sudden a portal just pops out.
You know, they don't need to explain the mechanics of it, why sometimes dropping it, whatever. But it happened in a good time. I love Professor Xavier, who is usually so quick to send his X-Men out to just random situations with very little information.
His meat shields?
Yeah, right. he's like, we should study this and figure out how it works.
Wolverine's like, nope, I'm out. And then there's the quote, which I thought was a quote, but it's not. I couldn't find it anywhere. Or maybe just Frozen 2 has ruined the SEO around the phrase into the unknown. Like, that was the thing that sounded like a quote to me. But again, I was trying to search for it, and I literally can't find anything that is not related to Frozen 2, because that was the song from that god-awful movie.
I feel like it's probably one of those things where it's just a common sentiment, you know, like to infinity and beyond.
To infinity and beyond is an actual quote, though.
No, that's what I mean, though. Like, it's similar to that like Into the Unknown from Frozen and To Infinity and Beyond. Also, though, even though I don't love the Frozen movies, the second one I enjoyed a little bit more because I feel like they had a lot more jokes in there for people my age. But.
I just hate Olaf. I watched the first one during lockdown because I was watching everything during lockdown I had never seen, and I just hate that character with my every fiber of my being.
I can see it. Little tangent, but too good to.
We literally were talking about Frozen for the past 3 minutes.
So I know you said you've seen the first couple episodes or a few episodes of The Last of Us.
Yes, I am not caught up. I do enjoy the show, but I'm not fully caught up.
Have you gotten to the point to where Ellie brings up the book? Or have you played the games? I forgot to ask you that.
The book or the magazine?
They reference it as a book, but it might be the mag. Oh, no, not that magazine.
Okay, different.
Yeah. Sorry, I just put it together. Okay, so you might start not like. Have you played the game?
I have not. I know tons of the game, though.
Okay, I won't spoil it for you. You might just stop watching the show and or hate Ellie because there's some. It's like they created a whole plot point that's going to be a major thing going on from now on. They're like, John will hate this. I'm interested. I feel like I'm going to get a text from you whenever you get to this point.
It's just going to be me swearing.
Yeah, because it's like it feels. There's a thing that happens that feels like it's going to be a one-off, and it becomes a major plot thread that carries like the rest of the season.
Don't ruin this show for me, Rod. I love what I've seen so far.
Yeah, I do too. To the listeners, it's the book. You're going to laugh now because you know. Anyway, moving on.
Yep.
They go through the portal. Everyone but Xavier goes through because even though he wanted to be careful, he's like, oh, they can go. Then we show the exterior of the planet.
The exterior of the planet?
I don't know how else to describe it.
We see the planet.
Yeah.
I put it as Sparkle Saturn.
Oh, yeah. I put it as Saturn, except the rings were Jubilee themed or something. I don't know. It's like they use the same whatever effect they use for her fireworks. And they show little vignettes of the weather going haywire there, just like we saw in DC earlier. Archon is explaining to Storm that the ring protects the planet just like the ozone protects the Earth. This is like kind of a 90s thing because I don't know if you remember in the 90s there was all this stuff like we have to save the ozone.
There's also literally a hole over Australia at that point.
Yeah. And
it has finally started healing.
And this is one of the few positive things that have come up, like political, ecological stuff. It's like you said, we actually did it. All the policies and stuff healed the ozone. There was a point in the 90s where like we didn't know if we were going to have a protective layer on the Earth.
No.
It was really on brand for like the 90s. Like, oh, there's a hole in the ozone, you know. There was a whole series. Captain Planet was all about that.
Yeah, we also see, like Rob was saying, a few vignettes of what's going on. And I actually wrote, to your point earlier, that you were like, oh, this guy feels like he's out of He-Man.
Yeah.
Literally, there's a guy who almost gets swallowed by an earthquake, who I called not He-Man because he's literally wearing like a similar chest protector to He-Man in that shot.
That's so funny. This is my next note. Was that He-Man?
Except Rod doesn't put a hyphen in it, so it says, is that Hemin?
Yeah. Listen, when I'm typing these notes, I'm like watching the TV at the same time. I'm always happy when I know what I meant when I go back down to read these.
I mean, we've talked about this before. At least yours is legible because it's typed. Mine, 50-50 shot.
It's so funny because we have different flavors of the same problem because you might be not able to read your handwriting, but I may have typed a bunch of random characters I have to decipher later.
Yeah.
Like what was near the D key that would So he explains that's kind of how it is. This ring protects the planet like that. So Storm says that she senses the planet is wounded, which is like a reiteration of hole in that ring thing. Storm agrees to help because she's a superhero.
Because she's a hero. Yeah.
And then we see the X-Men arrive through a portal, not at the fortress that Storm and Archon were at. So they're kind of in the city, and a whole mob of citizens immediately congregate and accuse them for bringing the bad weather. And then we get this like small hint of like indentured servitude or slavery, because like one person's like, oh, maybe they're here to help.
And they instantly just get shot down. And you could also tell the quality of clothing he's wearing is not as like highfalutin as some of these other characters. So like, it has like a pseudo Greek vibe to some of like the architecture, but it also has a little bit of that like Buck Rogers vibe to it, where it's like sort of space technology, but the average person isn't like in high-tech armor kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I think even one of them kind of yells like in the background, like get back to work or something.
Yeah, he just gets shut down. Jubilee shoots, and then robots attack.
Yeah, and then we cut away to Archon getting impatient with Storm, who is trying her best to like basically like meditate and get in tune with the Earth, and she's like, "You got to be patient because I'm trying to get in tune with an entire planet's ecosystem."
And she's been there for a few hours at most.
Yeah. Also, a planet she's never been to before, knew existed before.
Here's the thing. She doesn't even know if her shit works off planet, really.
Yeah, I was kind of, because you've heard me say before when they were on like the moon thing or whatever, like that was the blue zone?
Blue zone of the moon, yeah.
I was like, does that work on the moon? I don't know. But yeah, even here, like, it's like, does this work here? We don't know.
In the comics, she helps terraform Mars. Yeah, so yes, it does.
Yeah. So she's still trying to kind of get in sync, I guess, with this planet, basically, and Archon is getting really impatient, which is one of our first hints at something to come later.
Yeah, he really has the vibe of anytime your friend is dating a shitty dude, and you don't want to say it right off the bat because you want to go in with an open mind, but like you start seeing the flags popping up really early.
And Storm does, luckily within this time frame, kind of sync up, and she gets up and she's like, she points at this tower, she's like, that thing is causing all your problems, and he's like, that's the central energy transmitter, and she's like, oh cool, so you just turn that thing off, everything's fixed. And he's like, we can't do that. I feel like Storm lets this go too easily. She doesn't fight for it at all.
If there's a thing destroying your entire ecosystem and it's one thing, it's not a collection of like, oh, we're burning too many fires, we're polluting from this way. It's like pollution as a whole, as a cause, is harder to solve because there's so many kinds of pollution.
Yeah.
This is literally like, no, it's that fucking one thing, dude. It's one thing. You could turn off the one thing or come up with an alternate solution.
Yeah. So he doesn't want to do it.
Basically, it's 5G.
Yeah, right. So he doesn't want to turn it off, but Storm also doesn't advocate for it, really. So it's a really...
She kind of drops it.
Yeah.
But then she's
distracted by the abs.
He goes like hyper flirty, and how did you word it?
Archon Max on Storm.
And then I put awkward pickup artist handhold.
Yeah, pretty much. He gets just kind of like, not sleazy. Sleazy.
Yeah, but he's very sleazy.
He's just trying to smooth talk her. We briefly go back to see the X-Men fighting the robots when they beat them. And
Beast punches a robot.
Yeah, which is great. That's all you want to see.
He loves punching fucking robots.
I mean, I would too if my hand wouldn't break.
I mean, it didn't do well for him in Beyond Good and Evil, but here...
The soft robots.
Yeah.
Then we go back up to the fortress, and Storm has successfully calmed all the weather.
Thank you for saying that, because I wrote Storm begins to calm storms, and I hated myself for writing that down.
This does get confusing because, like, at the beginning of this episode, like
storms in storm is yeah, and you see the ring around the planet actually stabilizes and looks like less chaotic. It kind of goes from Kylo Ren's lightsaber to a traditional one, like it's less like fuzzy and frizzy on the edges.
Yeah, and it gets thick. No, I'm trying to. I feel like I'm like Steve Buscemi. It's like, what's up, my kids?
So back down there, Beast and them, they're trying to figure out what's going on. Beast pulls out a calculator.
Oh, like a TI-86.
It was a calculator with like computer keyboard keys on it. Mm-hmm. And then Jubilee is like, no, I think they're up there. And she points to the biggest building.
That's true. Yeah, she was like, so if a guy like that has that kind of power, he's probably at the castle.
And Beast is trying to like save face. But he's like, shit, she's right.
Did you ever watch the first Night at the Museum movie?
I've never watched any of the Night at the Museum.
You'll appreciate this joke then.
Because it's hateful to children?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Well, it actually is. It's hateful to stupid people.
Oh.
So
children.
Yeah. So, and actually specifically stupid white people. So Ben Stiller, he's the human in the situation, and then all the things come to life in the museum, right? So the statue of Sacagawea turns into presumably the real Sacagawea. Mm-hmm. So this van, I forget why, but the van is getting away and they need to find it.
Right.
And it gets away, and so they go outside. Sacagawea is doing like what like white people imagine indigenous people do to track people and animals and stuff. She's like feeling the ground and stuff. And then she looks up at Ben Stiller and is like, they went 50 meters this way and then crashed into a tree. And he was like, how do you know? And then the camera widens out within their view a van has crashed into a tree. And she just points.
No,
Anyway.
I don't like this movie.
Anyway, that was like Jubilee. She was like, how about we try up there? But yeah, that whole interaction is very short-lived. A ship appears above and then drops one of the golf ball bead things.
Yep.
And
I called it a portal bomb.
Wait, that's a good way to bring it. I feel like this is a different iteration of what they've been using before, because this is very specific and like teleports them without them having to walk through it.
And they also had no choice in where it goes, whereas like we see throughout this, to some extent there is a choice.
Yeah.
The X-Men don't know how they're doing it, but other people are very specific as to where they're landing.
So they immediately land in a prison cell. This like Masters of the Universe prison cell thing is. And
then there's a great moment there. I wish they showed us more of it, honestly.
Yeah. And the Wolverine's like, oh, we need to get out of here. We have to create a distraction. And he starts like a fake fight with Cyclops.
Yeah. He calls him a traitor, and it's like, I just imagine it's like the scene from season 1 that I keep using as a GIF reaction on Twitter, where it's just Wolverine just gut punching him when he's not expecting it.
Yeah. He's acting, but he's also like letting go of a bunch of pent up aggression.
So I've been doing one of the home boxing workouts, and when there's a thing called a coast, and then a power coast and a burnout. I imagine this is like a power coast where he's not trying to knock Cyclops out, but he's hitting it like 85, 90%. Right. He's like, I got to make this look good. Right. Bam.
And we never get to see that fight.
I know. I'm very sad we didn't get to see it.
Another part of the fortress where Archon is with Storm. Archon's like super happy. He's like, oh, everything's back to normal. Storm is just tapped out. She's like, I can't, we've established before that doing all this, anything weather related to a large, a scale, taps out Storm, uses a lot of energy.
Right. She's actually still in the middle of this too. It's not like she's fully succeeded or anything like that. Like she's still trying to get it under control. Yeah. So she's concentrating.
And then we find out that prison must have been pretty close or on the other side of the wall of that room, because the X-Men Kool-Aid Man through that wall right as
I think they worked their way there. I don't think you put it right next to it. It's like, who designed this? The same guy that designed the mansion?
The mansion, right. There's only 12 important people in the entire universe. So
Wolverine just straight up tackles Archon.
Yeah. They fight for a little bit, and that wakes Storm up from kind of her meditation or trance or whatever, and the weather just starts going berserk again. Storm stops the fight and says that she'll try to get the weather under control again, and then like kind of side eyes the X-Men, like, but there can't be any interruptions.
I mean, her team is literally made of interruptions, so
it's like, we're called the X-Men.
We fuck shit up.
Yeah. We usually cause the problems that we have to fix
because we don't lock anybody up.
Right. And then the way Storm and Archon kind of interact with each other, Jubilee doesn't say this, but it feels it in her tone where she's kind of like, get a room, guys. Like, so, she clearly acknowledges the flirting.
Right. So Storm basically starts to make everything go back to normal. And then you start to see some of the people that are out there reacting to the change. And there's another person who I referred to as not He-Man. And hopefully I can find these screen grabs without having to like capture them from the actual thing. But he was wearing an outfit that was similar to the movie version of He-Man's toys, which was a separate design, like what Dolph Lundgren was wearing.
I was saying the Dolph Lundgren movie.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Like it was like kind of like, or actually no, it wasn't the Dolph Lundgren one. It was the futuristic He-Man. Remember how there was the offshoot show that was like He-Man in the future?
That's right.
It was, his outfit was more like that dude.
So they were just like, what? How many He-Man how many Masters of the Universe can we fit here?
So I only picked up on 2, but I agree with you that Archon could also be like dollar store He-Man.
Which is, you watched like Toys That Made Us, right?
Of course.
You know that whole section where they were talking about how the creators of the Masters of the Universe were like, we literally just got high on shrooms and came up with as many stupid names as possible.
Yeah.
He's like, come on, Evil Lynn.
Evil Lynn is actually a dope name. Do you ever think that Cersei would be Evil Lynn one day? Cersei from Game of Thrones?
Oh, see, I didn't watch Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah. She is Evil Lynn in the modern, grittier He-Man.
The
Kevin Smith one.
The animated.
Yeah.
I need to watch the animated one. My brother told me.
Well, there's 2, because there's the one that's the kiddie version where he's just like a dude on steroids, and then there's the dark one, and the dark one's actually very enjoyable.
Yeah, I think my brother said both of them. Like he was like, these are worth watching. Yeah. Really cool. Which is funny because when I was in college, I bought the He-Man box set on DVD because I was like, oh, I love this.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, I didn't. I watched it. Same thing with Captain Planet. I thought I loved it. Dude. I think it was just something animated on the television.
Yeah.
And the toys were cool.
It's like Ninja Turtles as a concept, I still like. And I read the modern comics because they're written for an adult.
Mm-hmm.
The original cartoons are painful to watch.
I think I've actually watched the cartoons.
Don't. Like, to keep your rose-colored glasses and don't go back, dude.
No.
The nostalgia fuel is real. It does not age well. And that's, like, we said it before, that's why this, Batman, the Justice League, even like Superman's cartoon, those set off this cartoons can be for older audiences too.
I forgot about the Superman cartoon. That was really great. And then it had a really crappy game.
Well, that was Superman 64, which is one of the worst games ever made.
Yeah.
It's not even really crappy. It's one of the worst games ever made. And then everybody starts praising Storm.
Yeah. And I guess I didn't realize until that scene happened that she was able to let go. Like, I thought that she was going to have to maintain it actively.
Right. Because earlier when she was concentrating, I was like, oh, does she just need to sit here for forever? Because that sucks.
Yeah. That's kind of like Shadowcat in the movie version of Days of Future Past. When she's teleporting Wolverine to the past or whatever. It's like, how long has she been have to sit here for? How it should have ended had their parody of it. And she's like, I really gotta pee.
Just go. I'd be more worried about sleep at that point.
Right. So yeah, so the planet cheers on Storm is very like the Star Wars and celebration moment kind of thing, where like suddenly the entire planet's in one city and is there to cheer on Storm, and also immediately know that it was her. We won't ask questions.
And then there's the awkward proposal.
Yeah, Archon convinces Storm to stay. Smooth talks her. Yeah, and then proposes.
Yeah, he's like, basically, will you stay? She said yes. Beast gives an oh my that I feel like George Takei would be super proud of. And then, they're basically like, yep, Storm's going to be the queen. Everyone's like, what the fuck, to be continued?
Yeah. And I love how the X-Men, their jaws physically drop. And just to the edge of not being cartoonishly comedic.
Right.
Like, but a significant amount. It was pretty fun. She's basically Anna from Frozen, speaking of Frozen. It's like, you've known this man for 4 hours.
Oh my God. And that's why I don't like this episode.
Actually, she's like a combination of both those sisters, Elsa and Anna, right? Because she gets married way too fast, but she also controls some weather.
Has weather powers.
There you go. Is that you throwing away your trivia notes?
End the episode. Okay. We really don't have any other notes. We already went through it.
Thanks for joining us. If you have any thoughts, like how other Frozen references to different X-Men shows, make sure to drop them in the comments for either the YouTube upload or official Instagram post about this episode if you like what you heard and not watched. We'd appreciate a rating on the podcast app you're choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. Is it iHeartRadio? iHeart Podcast?
iHeart.
Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and CastBox. Stay tuned next week for what you know what's going to happen to Storm, but she's still going to be pretty dumb.